The wind howled through the stark, cold streets of Washington, D.C., carrying with it an eerie chill that seemed to seep into the very fabric of the city. As the night enveloped the Capitol, the grandiose government buildings cast long, sinister shadows, their architectural splendor belying the terror that lurked within. It was a city of power and secrets, but tonight, it would be haunted by something far more sinister than political intrigue. Dr. Sarah Bennett, a renowned paranormal psychologist, sat in her office, bathed in the dim glow of a single desk lamp. Her fingers hovered over her laptop keyboard, eyes scanning a series of distressing reports that had surfaced over the past month. Missing persons, violent incidents, and inexplicable phenomena were increasingly being linked to several key government buildings. The words ghost attacks appeared more frequently than she was comfortable with. The phone rang, slicing through the silence. It was an unassuming call, yet it held the weight of urgency. Dr. Bennett came the voice of Agent Lucas Reynolds, a member of the covert government agency tasked with handling supernatural disturbances. We need you to head to the old executive office building. There have been multiple reports of supernatural activities, and it's escalating. Dr. Bennett's pulse quickened. She had been on many investigations, but this was different. The old executive office building was not only a relic of American history, but also a symbol of power. If spirits were causing chaos there, it was a serious breach. Within the hour, Dr. Bennett was joined by her team. Liam Evans, with his rugged exterior and dry humor, carried an array of ghost-hunting gadgets that seemed to promise a symphony of beeps and blips. Jenna Rodriguez, a medium whose serene demeanor contrasted with the chaos she often faced, followed closely behind. Kyle Carter, the tech wizard, was already tinkering with the latest spectral detection devices. As they arrived at the imposing structure, its neoclassical columns loomed like ancient sentinels guarding against the night. The building was eerily silent, save for the occasional gust of wind that rattled the boarded-up windows. "Welcome to the haunted house of the government," Liam said with a grin, breaking the tension. Who knew public service came with a side of poltergeists? Dr. Bennett gave him a stern look. "This isn't a joke. We're dealing with something dangerous." Inside, the team was greeted by the cold, musty air of the abandoned offices. The old wallpaper was peeling, and cobwebs hung like delicate veils in the corners. The grandeur of the building was marred by an unsettling emptiness, amplifying the sense of foreboding. Kyle set up the equipment with practiced efficiency. "Let's see what the ghosts have been up to lately," he said, eyes focused on the screens displaying electromagnetic fields and thermal readings. Jenna's expression was grave. "I can already feel it. The energy is oppressive. There's something dark here, something that doesn't want us to uncover the truth." The team began their sweep of the building, their footsteps echoing ominously in the desolate halls. As they ventured deeper, an inexplicable coldness settled in. The EMF meters began to spike, and strange, ghostly whispers filled the air, barely audible but unmistakably present. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated through the building. The team jumped, and Jenna let out a gasp. That wasn't just a draft. "Something's here with us." Dr. Bennett signaled for the team to regroup. "Stay close. We don't know what we're dealing with yet, but it's clear that the disturbances are more than just a few restless spirits." As they advanced cautiously, the lights flickered and went out completely, plunging them into darkness. The building seemed to breathe with a life of its own, its ancient walls holding on to secrets that were about to be unearthed. The investigation had just begun, and already, the shadows of the old executive office building were beginning to reveal their dark and deadly secrets. With every step, the team felt the weight of history and malevolence pressing upon them. Little did they know that this night would mark the beginning of a haunting, unraveling the darkest corners of Washington, D.C., exposing a conspiracy that reached far beyond the realm of the supernatural. The old executive office building's corridors stretched out like a labyrinth of forgotten history, and as Dr. Sarah Bennett and her team ventured further inside, they could almost hear the echoes of past conversations lingering in the air. Each step they took was met with an oppressive silence, broken only by the creaking floorboards beneath their feet and the distant hum of machinery, which seemed out of place in the otherwise abandoned building. Liam Evans, ever the skeptic, was inspecting his gear with a bemused look on his face. You'd think with all this technology, we'd have a better chance of finding a ghost than a needle in a haystack. Only if the ghosts are nice enough to turn on their GPS, Kyle Carter quipped as he adjusted his thermal camera, which was currently scanning the hallway for any anomalies. Jenna Rodriguez, meanwhile, moved with a grace that belied her unease. Her eyes darted around, absorbing the building's every nuance. I sense a presence here, but it's erratic, like the spirits are trying to hide from us. Dr. Bennett took in the situation with a blend of scientific curiosity and cautious optimism. Let's split up. Liam, you and Kyle stay here and monitor the equipment. Jenna and I will explore the West Wing. We need to cover as much ground as possible. As the team went their separate ways, the corridors seemed to close in around them, each turn and passageway more confounding than the last. Dr. Bennett and Jenna navigated the dimly lit West Wing, their flashlights casting long, flickering shadows against the walls. So, Dr. Bennett said, trying to lighten the mood, how do you usually deal with spirits that don't want to be found? Jenna's expression was solemn. It's not just about finding them. It's about understanding their motives. Many are tied to unfinished business, but some are driven by darker impulses. The air grew colder as they ventured deeper, and the temperature gauge on Dr. Bennett's device plummeted. A gust of icy wind whipped past them, extinguishing their flashlights momentarily. When the lights flickered back to life, they found themselves in front of a large, ornate door. Its brass handle was worn and tarnished, and the door itself seemed to pulsate with a sinister energy. This doesn't look like it's seen much use lately, Dr. Bennett remarked, studying the door. Jenna placed her hand on the cold metal, shivering slightly. There's something behind it. I can feel it. With a creak that echoed ominously through the empty corridor, Dr. Bennett pushed the door open. The room beyond was a large, opulent office, though it had clearly been neglected for decades. Dust lay thick on the mahogany furniture, and cobwebs draped like tattered curtains across the room. In the center, an old desk sat under a broken chandelier, which hung precariously from the ceiling. Dr. Bennett approached the desk and examined the scattered papers and old photographs strewn across it. One photo caught her eye, an old black and white image of a group of men in dark suits, standing proudly in front of the building. The man at the center had a strikingly familiar face. This must be someone important, she mused, holding up the photo. It could be connected to the disturbances. Suddenly, the temperature dropped even further, and a low growl echoed from somewhere in the room. Jenna's eyes widened, and she quickly raised her EMF detector, which began to beep rapidly. There's something here, Jenna said, her voice trembling. Something angry. The lights flickered again, and the room seemed to close in around them. Dr. Bennett turned to see a shadowy figure darting past the doorway, its presence barely perceptible. Did you see that? Jenna asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Bennett nodded, her mind racing. We need to regroup with the others. This place is more than just haunted. It's a nexus of something far more sinister. As they left the room, the weight of the atmosphere seemed to follow them, and they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The investigation was quickly turning into a race against time and terror, and they needed to uncover the truth before the shadows of the old executive office building claimed more than just their sanity. We've got a problem, Liam said, catching his breath. Something dark and powerful is here, and it's not going to be easy to stop. Dr. Bennett nodded, her expression grim. We need to find out what's driving this malevolence and fast. The safety of everyone in this building depends on it. The team regrouped, knowing that they were up against forces far beyond their understanding. The mystery of the old executive office building was becoming increasingly complex, and they needed to unravel the truth before it was too late. In the aftermath of the terrifying encounter in the basement, The team regrouped in a dimly lit conference room, their faces etched with exhaustion and worry. The shadows of their ordeal seemed to cling to them, making the air thick with tension. Dr. Bennett was poring over the documents Kyle and Liam had retrieved, trying to make sense of the chaos they had just experienced. Jenna Reyes, the team's tech specialist, was meticulously analyzing the footage from Kyle's infrared camera. "If there's one thing I know," she said, her fingers flying over the keyboard, "it's that ghosts don't make things easy." The flickering images on the screen showed distorted figures and erratic energy spikes. Jenna frowned, her brow furrowed in concentration. "These anomalies are unlike anything I've ever seen. It's like the ghosts are feeding off each other's energy." Dr. Bennett, her voice weary but determined, turned to Liam and Kyle. "What did you experience in that room?" Any details could be crucial. Liam rubbed his temples, trying to shake off the residual fear. The shadow, it wasn't just a shadow. It felt alive, like it was feeding off our fear. Kyle nodded in agreement. And the whispers, there were so many voices, all overlapping. It was like they were trying to tell us something, but it was all just noise. "Noise," Jenna said, "or a message." Dr. Bennett's eyes lit up. "Exactly. We need to decipher what they're trying to communicate." As the team discussed their findings, an urgent knock on the door interrupted them. Sheriff Rick Malone, who had been providing logistical support, entered, his face grim. "We've got reports of more disturbances, and this time it's affecting several government buildings simultaneously." Dr. Bennett's eyes widened. "It's spreading? How is that even possible?" Sheriff Malone handed over a stack of new reports. Witnesses have seen apparitions and experienced unexplained phenomena in at least 3 other locations: the Department of Justice, the Treasury Building, and the National Archives. It's like a coordinated attack. Jenna glanced at the reports and then at the screen. If these entities are operating in multiple places, they must have a central source of power. They're not just haunting, they're orchestrating. The team exchanged worried glances. "If they're coordinating," Kyle said, "then they're working together. That means they're smarter than we thought." Dr. Bennett took a deep breath. "We need to investigate these other locations. If there's a central force driving this, it's likely connected to the origin of the hauntings. But we have to be careful. These entities are powerful and dangerous." Sheriff Malone nodded. "I'll coordinate with local law enforcement and get additional support. We'll need all the help we can get." As the team prepared to split up and tackle the new locations, Liam turned to Dr. Bennett. "Do you have any theories about why this is happening now?" Dr. Bennett's face was a mask of determination. "There's something in the history of these buildings, something that might have awakened or been disturbed. We need to find that connection." With a renewed sense of urgency, the team set out to investigate the Department of Justice. The building was imposing, its grand facade a stark contrast to the fear that now gripped its halls. As they approached, the air seemed to grow colder, and an unsettling silence enveloped them. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with the echoes of past grievances. The team moved cautiously, their equipment scanning for any signs of paranormal activity. Jenna's voice was steady but tense. "If there's a pattern, we need to find it fast. These ghosts are growing bolder." As they ventured deeper into the building, the sense of foreboding increased. The whispers from the basement were replaced by a deep, throbbing hum that resonated through the walls. The team pressed on, knowing that the answers they sought were just beyond their grasp, hidden in the dark recesses of the building's haunted past. The mystery of Washington was deepening, and the team knew they were only beginning to scratch the surface. The Department of Justice loomed ahead, its Gothic architecture casting eerie shadows under the moonlight. The air was thick with an otherworldly chill as Dr. Bennett, Jenna, Kyle, and Liam approached the grand entrance. They were armed with their ghost hunting equipment and an unspoken determination to uncover the truth behind the malevolent forces plaguing Washington. Sheriff Malone had managed to secure temporary access for the team, but he would be waiting outside with backup. The team's nerves were taut, each member steeling themselves for what lay ahead. As they entered the building, the grandeur of the lobby contrasted starkly with the palpable sense of dread that hung in the air. Jenna led the way, her equipment buzzing with activity. "The energy readings are off the charts," she said, her voice a mix of awe and apprehension. "It's like the ghosts are drawing power from the building itself." Dr. Bennett nodded. "We need to find the source of this energy. It's not just about haunting, it's about control." As they ascended the marble staircase, the building seemed to come alive with whispers and distant, ghostly echoes. The team reached the upper floors, where the whispers grew louder, forming incoherent murmurs that seemed to swirl around them. "Stay sharp," Dr. Bennett warned. "We're likely dealing with something far more sinister than we've faced so far." They entered a long corridor, its walls lined with portraits of past figures in law. The air was colder here, and the shadows seemed to dance along the walls. Suddenly, the temperature dropped drastically, and a dark, fog-like mist began to seep from the corners of the corridor. Jenna's eyes widened. This isn't just any mist. It's a manifestation of the entity's energy. Liam gripped his flashlight tightly, scanning the mist for any signs of movement. Whatever we're dealing with, it's making its presence known. As they continued down the corridor, Kyle's equipment began to register a series of intense spikes. "We're getting a major energy reading from one of the offices up ahead," he said. "We should check it out." The team approached the office, its door slightly ajar. Inside, the room was in disarray, papers scattered and furniture overturned. The atmosphere was thick with an oppressive, suffocating energy. In the center of the room, an old, dusty ledger lay open on a desk, its pages yellowed with age. Dr. Bennett approached the desk and examined the ledger. "This looks like a record of some sort. It might hold clues to what's happening here." Jenna carefully brushed off the dust and began to decipher the handwritten entries. These records mention a series of controversial cases and unresolved grievances, she noted. "It seems like the spirits here are seeking justice for past wrongs." As Jenna read through the ledger, a shadowy figure materialized in the corner of the room. Its form was indistinct, a dark silhouette that seemed to writhe and shift in the dim light. The figure's eyes glowed with an eerie red hue, and an overwhelming sense of malevolence radiated from it. The team fell silent, their breath catching in their throats. Dr. Bennett took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "This must be one of the entities we've been tracking. It's connected to the unrest in these records." The shadowy figure moved closer, its presence chilling. It let out a low, guttural growl, and the temperature in the room plummeted further. The team's equipment began to go haywire, and the whispers grew into a cacophony of anguished cries. Jenna's voice trembled as she tried to make sense of the chaos. "We need to confront it directly. If we can't drive it away, it will continue to wreak havoc." Dr. Bennett nodded, her resolve firm. "We need to use everything we've learned so far. This entity is feeding off the anger and sorrow of the past. We have to put an end to it." The team prepared for a confrontation, their gear buzzing and crackling with energy. The shadowy figure advanced, its growls growing louder. The battle against the phantoms was about to escalate, and the team knew they were in for the fight of their lives. With their hearts pounding and their resolve unshaken, they steeled themselves for the confrontation. The night was far from over, and the ghosts of Washington were about to reveal their darkest secrets. The stifling darkness of the Department of Justice seemed to pulse with an eerie vitality as the team braced themselves for the confrontation. The shadowy figure in the office continued its menacing advance, its presence a swirling vortex of malice and sorrow. Dr. Bennett adjusted her ghost-hunting equipment, the hum of the devices blending with the whispers that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. "We need to disrupt its energy field. If we can't banish it, at least we can weaken it." Jenna, clutching a spirit box, nodded. "I'll try to communicate with it. Maybe we can reason with it, or find out what it truly wants." The figure's growls reverberated through the room, its form growing more solid and menacing. Its eyes glowed with a fiery intensity, illuminating the office with an unsettling red hue. The whispers crescendoed into a shrill cacophony of agony, pressing in on the team from all sides. Liam positioned an array of ghost traps and energy disruptors around the perimeter. "These should help contain it and hopefully reduce its power," he said, his voice taut with tension. Dr. Bennett took a deep breath and approached the shadowy figure. "We're here to help, but we need to understand what you're seeking. Why are you tormenting this place?" The shadowy figure paused, its form flickering as if struggling against an unseen force. It let out a low, sorrowful moan that resonated with a deep, palpable sadness. Jenna activated the spirit box, its crackling voice cutting through the tension. "Help us seek the truth." The words were barely coherent, but they were enough to signal that the entity's unrest was tied to a deeper, more complex mystery. Dr. Bennett studied the ledger on the desk, trying to piece together the clues. This ledger, it's filled with names and cases, people who were wronged, cases that were never resolved. Jenna's eyes widened as she connected the dots. The spirits here are not just seeking revenge. They're searching for justice that was never served. A sudden gust of wind blew through the office, extinguishing the team's flashlights and plunging them into darkness. The shadowy figure let out a bone-chilling wail, and the temperature in the room dropped dramatically. The team's breath became visible, their voices trembling in the freezing air. Dr. Bennett grabbed a flashlight and turned it on, casting a beam that cut through the darkness. The figure was now directly in front of them, its form coalescing into something almost human, but still grotesquely distorted. "We need to restore balance," Dr. Bennett said firmly. "If these spirits are seeking justice, we must find a way to address their grievances." Jenna nodded, pulling out an artifact from her bag, a relic known for its cleansing properties. This might help. It's said to dispel dark entities when used in the right context. As Jenna began to chant an incantation, the shadowy figure recoiled, its form flickering violently. The whispers grew louder, a mix of anger and hope intertwining. The energy in the room surged, the ghost traps and disruptors glowing with a bright, pulsating light. Liam and Kyle worked together to activate the traps, their equipment whirring and crackling as they contained the entity's energy. The shadowy figure thrashed against the containment field, its form gradually dissipating into the swirling mist. The room seemed to exhale a collective sigh of relief as the oppressive energy began to lift. The whispers faded into a haunting silence, leaving behind a feeling of melancholy and unresolved tension. Dr. Bennett looked around at her team, her expression a mix of exhaustion and determination. "We've managed to weaken it, but this is just one part of a larger puzzle. The spirits here are connected to a web of corruption and injustice that runs deep." Jenna, still holding the artifact, nodded. "We've made progress, but we need to continue our investigation. There are more secrets to uncover, and more spirits seeking resolution." As they prepared to leave the office, the team knew that the battle was far from over. The ghosts of Washington were revealing their darkest secrets, and the team's quest for justice was only beginning. The night was relentless in its dark embrace as the team trudged through the labyrinthine corridors of the abandoned Senate office building. The haunting presence that had plagued the Department of Justice seemed to have shifted, drawing the team deeper into the bowels of Washington's governmental underbelly. Dr. Bennett led the way, her face illuminated by the eerie glow of her EMF meter. Each step seemed to echo with the weight of history and the heavy silence of the corridors, where the walls themselves appeared to whisper secrets of a bygone era. "This place is giving me the creeps," Kyle muttered, his flashlight flickering erratically. "It's like the shadows are watching us." Jenna glanced back at him, her expression serious. "The energy here is intense. We're getting closer to the source." As they approached a grand but decaying chamber, the temperature dropped suddenly. The air became dense and heavy, laden with an oppressive presence. Dr. Bennett's breath formed visible clouds as she instructed the team to set up their equipment. "Let's split up," she said, her voice steady despite the palpable tension. "We need to cover more ground." Jenna, take Kyle and search the eastern wing. Liam, you and I will investigate the main hall. Jenna and Kyle made their way down the crumbling hallways, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust. The walls were adorned with faded portraits of politicians long forgotten, their eyes seemingly following their every move. Do you hear that? Jenna whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of their footsteps. It's like a distant, rhythmic thumping. Kyle strained his ears. I don't hear anything. The thumping grew louder, a rhythmic drumming that resonated through the walls. Jenna's spirit box crackled to life, and a distorted voice emerged, filled with desperation. Help us find the truth. Meanwhile, Dr. Bennett and Liam entered the main hall, where a large mirror stood covered with a dusty shroud. The room was filled with an unsettling silence, punctuated only by the soft hum of the ghost hunting equipment. Dr. Bennett approached the mirror, intrigued by its imposing presence. Why is this mirror here? Liam asked, studying the ornate frame. It doesn't seem to fit the decor of this building. Dr. Bennett carefully removed the shroud, revealing the mirror's surface, which seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light. Let's see what this mirror has to show us. As she examined the reflection, the room around them began to warp and twist. The mirror's surface rippled like disturbed water, and a chilling breeze swept through the hall. The reflection morphed, showing scenes of historical events, the signing of important treaties, but with a sinister twist. Shadows moved in the background, whispering and clawing at the figures in the mirror. The temperature in the room plummeted, and Dr. Bennett's breath became frosty. She turned to Liam, her eyes wide with realization. This mirror is a gateway, an object of dark significance. It's tied to the corruption and secrets we're uncovering. Liam adjusted his gear, his face pale. We need to be cautious. Whatever is being reflected in this mirror might be influencing the events here. As they spoke, a sudden crash echoed through the building, followed by screams and the sound of shuffling feet. Jenna and Kyle burst into the main hall, their faces ashen. Something's attacking us. Jenna shouted, "We need to get out of here." Dr. Bennett and Liam exchanged worried glances, quickly gathering their equipment. They made their way back through the maze of corridors, the mirror's haunting reflection, a constant reminder of the darkness they were confronting. As they exited the building, the night air felt almost soothing in comparison to the malevolent atmosphere inside. The team was exhausted and shaken, but resolved to press on. The mysteries of Washington were far from over, and the dark reflections of the past were closing in on them. The battle against the spirits and the corruption that had plagued the city was far from over. With each step, the team drew closer to the heart of the mystery. In a final, desperate act, Dr. Bennett used a powerful ritual to banish the entity. The facility shook with the force of the exorcism, and the malevolent presence began to dissipate. The shadowy figure writhed and howled as it was forced back into the darkness from which it had emerged. With the entity defeated, the facility fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the storm outside subsided. The team emerged, exhausted but triumphant, knowing that they had faced the darkest forces imaginable and emerged victorious. As dawn broke over Washington, D.C., the team looked back at the facility one last time. The city was still and quiet, the lingering shadows of the night slowly fading. Dr. Bennett and her team had uncovered the truth behind the haunting and had battled the malevolent forces that had plagued the city. The mystery of Washington had been solved, but the echoes of their confrontation would linger in their memories forever. The battle against the supernatural was over, for now, but the darkness was always lurking, waiting for the next opportunity to strike.